Chief Diversity Officer may be the hottest job now. What does a Chief Diversity Officer do? Why is Chief Diversity Officer important? Do you need to hire a diversity and inclusion leader? What does a Chief Diversity Officer do? A Chief Diversity Officer is an experienced diversity leader to lead and be accountable to an organization on everything equity, diversity, and inclusion. The Chief Diversity Officer is a strategic leader, thought partner and implementer who will connect the dots between diversity and inclusion efforts across the organization. Typically, early in their tenure, the Chief Diversity Officer will develop a comprehensive organization-wide strategic diversity and inclusion plan, develop training programs for faculty, staff and students, review and assess the impact and effectiveness of diversity and inclusion programs, and serve as a leader in the organization. An organization that hires a Chief Diversity Officer can be government, a university, for-profit corporation, charities, or any non-profit organization. The CDO will serve as a champion for equity, diversity and inclusion initiatives. The CDO will work with leadership, management, staff and senior leadership to further a more vibrant, inclusive, and supportive environment for underrepresented and all members of the organization. A Chief Diversity Officer is a senior position and usually reports to the President, Chief Operation Officer, or Chief Human Resources Officer, depends on the organization's structure. In universities, the Chief Diversity Officer usually reports to the Principal of the university. Why is Chief Diversity Officer will be the hottest job in HR right now? According to HR thought leader Josh Bersin, the Chief Diversity Officer will be the strategic partner to the CEO, rather than just an HR program. However, it is also going to be the toughest job as well. There are 9 dimensions to diversity: age, gender, religion, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, class, disability, and nationality. Each of the dimensions will require special treatments and specialties. Why is the Chief Diversity Officer job is a tough job? As above, there are so many different types of diversity, and most senior leaders think they understand diversity, plus it is hard to measure diversity. So basically it is a job that can get criticized a lot, but the scope is very broad, and it is hard to measure, and also everyone thinks they know enough to be dangerous. And until now, most of the diversity and inclusion functions in small and large corporations are underfunded. Chief Diversity Officer job description and responsibilities samples. Essential duties and responsibilities include the following. The Chief Diversity Officer will lead the Committee on Diversity, Equity and Inclusion to plan and implement an organization's diversity initiatives and activities that interact readily and effectively with student affinity groups, students, faculty and staff from underrepresented populations, and all members of the organization community. The Chief Diversity Officer will serve as a leading expert in providing daily educational programs to the employee population. The Chief Diversity Officer will have a strong commitment to the organization's goals and objectives of providing quality programs, academic offerings, pedagogical support and direct service to customers. The Chief Diversity Officer will work with the organization bias incident response team to respond and investigate bias-related incidents, and make strategic and proactive recommendations based on outcomes. The Chief Diversity Officer will facilitate opportunities for faculty and staff training, collaborate with human resources to enhance recruitment, hiring, promotion and retention of diverse faculty and staff, and provide support to employees with diverse experiences and backgrounds. The Chief Diversity Officer will maintain knowledge on current and emerging developments/trends for assigned areas of responsibility, assesses the impact, and collaborates with senior management to incorporate new trends and developments in current and future strategies. The Chief Diversity Officer will direct and enhance organizational initiatives by positively influencing and supporting change management and/or departmental/enterprise initiatives within assigned areas of responsibility. The Chief Diversity Officer provides subject matter expertise to team members and applicable internal/external stakeholders on complex assignments/projects for his/her assigned areas of responsibility. in collaboration with HR centers of excellence and business leaders, develop and implement specific enterprise diversity objectives and business plans to align inclusion initiatives with business strategies and metrics focusing on the workplace, workforce, marketplace and community. The Chief Diversity Officer will ensure diversity outcome is reflected in the workforce/workplace and in business activities, including marketing materials, suppliers/vendors and community-facing efforts. The Chief Diversity Officer builds relationships with leaders, stakeholders and HR colleagues to drive diversity-related messages throughout the organization. The Chief Diversity Officer will educate, partner, consult, and collaborate with business and HR areas to effectively build, incorporate, and manage business corporate inclusion initiatives. The Chief Diversity Officer will partner with corporate functions and initiate the development of supplier diversity strategies to support diversity and inclusion needs and demands based on current and future business needs. The Chief Diversity Officer will collaborate with the corporate communications team to create communications to increase diversity and inclusion awareness. The Chief Diversity Officer will serve as a change agent, consultant, thought leader, influencer and SME on diversity and inclusion-related issues that impact the enterprise. The Chief Diversity Officer will identify, develop and foster relationships with relevant external organizations, thought leaders, partners and vendors. The Chief Diversity Officer will participate in and lead vendor selection, evaluation and education processes. The Chief Diversity Officer will manage, monitor and report supplier diversity program performance and trends. Develop and implement best practices for diversity and inclusion action planning. Ensure business accountability for follow-up. The Chief Diversity Officer will develop tracking strategies to monitor and evaluate the impact and ROI of initiatives, develop reports on program effectiveness and make recommendations for program enhancement and improvement. The Chief Diversity Officer will design and implement metrics, monitoring and reporting system to effectively benchmark organizational progress in diversity and inclusion. The Chief Diversity Officer will collaborate with HR business partners, HR centers of excellence and business leaders to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of diversity and inclusion programs. The Chief Diversity Officer will work with senior leadership in designing and implementing institution-wide changes to ensure diversity, equity and respect for all teammates and patients. Identifies areas of opportunity, develop recommended courses of action, secures senior leadership approval and drives implementation. The Chief Diversity Officer will lead strategic, innovative initiatives that institutionalize diversity, inclusion and equity throughout all aspects of organization operations. The Chief Diversity Officer will provide strategic oversight of the Language Access Department to assure the provision of quality, timely, and cost-effective interpretation and translation services through trained interpreters, translators, and the effective use of technology. The Chief Diversity Officer will provide executive oversight of organizations' supplier diversity strategy. Works across the enterprise and community to promote opportunities for spend with supplier diversity businesses and addresses barriers where they exist. The Chief Diversity Officer will advocate for and provides executive oversight of diverse spheres of influence such as diversity councils, system resource groups, and teammate networks and ensures their strategic impact on the system. The Chief Diversity Officer will collaborate with other members of leadership to develop and maintain strategic partnerships with community organizations and other entities as appropriate. Represents the organization with external organizations regarding diversity issues that affect the health system and community and works to build the organization's brand and reputation for diversity. The Chief Diversity Officer will develop diversity and inclusion metrics and devises ongoing measures that support the evolution of diversity and inclusion as cultural anchors, benchmarks and provides avenues for implementation of best-in-class strategies in organization strategies and programs. The Chief Diversity Officer oversees system affirmative action plans, educates business unit leaders and develops goals. Chief Diversity Officer Job Competencies. Here are some examples of CDO leadership competencies. Diversity and inclusion, expert in diversity and inclusion knowledge. Talent management, selects, develops, optimizes, and retains diverse talent to achieve individual, team, and organizational objectives. Teammate engagement, develops and implements actions to improve and sustain teammates' commitment. Sustains engagement at the 75th percentile. Continuous improvement, identifies and implements actions to improve existing processes, practices, behaviors and lean tools to achieve organizational objectives. Financial management, develops and implements budget targets to achieve organizational objectives. Supporting standards, sets the tone for the system's culture by modeling and monitoring the adherence of the Code of Business Conduct.
Companies need diversity. It is beneficial to an organization to think with a wider breadth of perspectives. It portrays a positive image to the public eye, and gives them access to the potential revenue gains from employing people who can contribute different things to the companies they work for. Unfortunately, hiring diversity is an issue that has only recently begun to improve. Here are the top 11 HR diversity statistics. Why your team needs to change their mind about diversity hiring and 5 ways to help you begin to do so. Diversity stats. Number 1. The biggest reason companies avoid hiring diversity? 41% say they're too busy. This stat shows us one of the biggest barriers to creating a more diverse workforce. A SHRM report recently noted that 41% of managers are too busy to implement diversity initiatives. It may be true that managers have too much on their plates to handle on a given day, but the stat reveals just how small of a priority diversity hiring is. If managers want anything to get done about the lack of diversity on their teams, they'll need to start fitting it into their schedule. That means making it a bigger priority. What can you do to move diversity to the top of your list? Make it a team effort. Not everything needs to fall on your hands. Get insight, feedback, and support from other members of senior management. Getting commitment from them creates a way for everyone to encourage diversity throughout the organization. Create a committee. This could be a small group of managers or even team members that collaborate on and establish ways to create more diversity within the workplace. Remember, this group should be diverse in employee rank, race, gender, age, etc. A team that lacks diversity will not bring about the best approach to welcoming diversity. Use other companies. Today, diversity is a group effort in that organizations of all types and in every industry are trying to be more inclusive. While it might unveil some of your own shortcomings, looking to others who are succeeding can inspire new ideas for your own company and help you start on your own path to a more diverse workforce. Be honest. No one is perfect, and even seasoned leaders can struggle with understanding how to implement diversity. Approaching the issue with honesty will show self-reflection and encourage others to join in on improving the problem. Diversity stats. Number 2. There are fewer CEOs who are women than men in leadership roles. Named David. When a single name outnumbers an entire gender in leadership, it reveals a staggering problem. This stat reveals just how few opportunities women get in the business world, and it's not because women can't handle leadership. Women are capable of handling all the demands of a business. The people in charge simply aren't giving women the opportunity to prove themselves. Tips for women to thrive in the workplace and prove their worth. Voice the projects and opportunities you really want to work on. Push back at other times. Play to your strengths, even if they're stereotypes. Build relationships with your boss and others high up in leadership from the start. They will be your best supporter. What is gender bias? Diversity stats. Number 3. Racially diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams by 35%. One of the biggest things stopping managers from implementing diversity is that they're afraid that introducing people who may not agree with each other will hamper productivity. For those companies, we offer the above-mentioned stat. Because diverse teams outperform non-diverse ones, companies should actively try to engage with diversity initiatives as soon as possible to make sure they're implemented, instead of trying to hamper them out of fear. In fact, the awkwardness that comes with not understanding those around you is what makes diverse teams work so well. In a cognitive intelligence study done by MIT engineers, researchers observed that successful teams had three things in common. They gave one another roughly equal time to talk. They were sensitive towards each other, even in awkward situations. They included more women, making them the most diverse. In other words, having different types of people on the same team can help others look at problems more carefully while also being more innovative, creative and inclusive about their solutions. Diversity stats number 4. 57% of employees think their companies should be more diverse. Your employees want to be more productive. They want racial diversity in the workplace as much as anyone else. Working with the same people, who've shared their background and experiences, can be nice, but it's becoming boring rather quickly. Without a flood of new experiences to keep them motivated and excited about the people they work with, there's a chance they could get burnt out. So when it comes to diversity, you can be sure your employees have your back. Diversity stats number 5. 40% of people think there's a double standard against hiring women. Diversity in Canada top diversity employers. A recent Pew study asked respondents this question. The stat reveals just how much bias against women in the workplace there is. Both women and men are more likely to hire men over women, and it's likely what leads to a lack of gender diversity in the workplace, as well as problems with women in leadership positions, which we discussed in an earlier stat. Companies need to recognize this bias and implement programs which favor women in order to counteract this inherent bias in hiring. Ways to help create a level playing field and eliminate gender bias in the workplace include: establish clear criteria and qualifications for decisions. Make yourself accountable to others when it comes to hiring and promoting. Study the existing criteria you use to make management decisions. Be able to explain the decisions you make. Educate and make your employees aware of how stereotypes work. Diversity stats number 6. Blind applications lead to 5 times more women. It sounds like a bit of an exaggeration to say that, but in reality, this stat demonstrates just how few women are considered in male-dominated fields. In orchestras, when companies switched from auditions where they could see the candidate to blind auditions, the percentage of female members in the orchestra jumped from 5% to 25%. Similarly, institutions using a double-blind method to review scientific studies have similarly increased the number of women who get published in journals. This is good in adding diversity to your team while also helping your team perform overall. In a large diversity study of more than 4,600 people, teams that welcomed more women performed better than those with fewer or no women. Diversity stats number 7. Google's tech staff is only 4.8% African American. Diversity is everyone's problem. Being a big company doesn't mean you're excluded from needing diversity. Along with that stat, only 1.1% of Google's tech staff is Hispanic, and only 33.1% are women. When the number of college IT graduates is several times that number, it shows how little even larger companies take diversity into account. Diversity stats number 8. Caucasians received 50% more callbacks than those from African American descent. This stat makes the case for affirmative action. Arguments against affirmative action say that it gives minorities an unfair advantage without the skills to properly perform the tasks required of them. But in reality, initiatives like affirmative action are created to battle the inherent bias against African Americans in the workplace. Categorically, people of minority backgrounds are invited less often to the interviews, and when the numbers are this consistent, it makes the case for targeted diversity initiatives. This is where a true understanding of interview bias comes into play. Individuals should be hired based on skill, experience, and performance, not by their name or ethnic background. Sadly, snap judgments are still very much a part of the interview and hiring decisions. As a manager or employer, there are things you can do to prevent bias from interfering. Make it a process. Create a list of questions and tasks that every candidate must answer and in the same manner and point of the assessment. Keeping consistency ensures everyone has an equal opportunity to perform well. Make a justified decision. Don't decide right away on which candidate is the best choice. Look over your notes and justify why they are, or aren't, the best fit. Write down your reasoning and make sure that it is based on more than just superficial facts. Welcoming more than one colleague into this decision will help deter bias. Diversity stats number 9. Bilingual employees earn 10% more revenue. Hiring bilingual employees, no matter what other languages they may speak, is one great way to increase diversity in your company and see a few immediate benefits. If many of your employees interact with customers and clients on a regular basis, being able to speak multiple languages is a huge boon for your business. When a customer who does not speak English is interested in your product, having someone who speaks their language makes the transaction happen much more smoothly. Diversity stats number 10. Teams where men and women are equal earn 41% more revenue. Another stat that supports moving toward greater gender diversity. When companies employ more women, they're able to take advantage of a greater wealth of perspectives. This, in turn, causes companies to have more angles from which to tackle big business issues. The results are faster solutions, more creative thinking, and higher overall revenue. There are more than 10 reasons to diversify your workforce, but we think these are the most important ones. There's no reason to avoid creative diversity hiring initiatives any longer. Your employees want them, they're more profitable, and they help rectify other unfair practices in hiring. Diversity benefits everyone, so it's time for your company to start taking advantage of diversity now. Wondering where you should start? Take a step closer to promoting diversity by eliminating your hiring bias. Become educated and aware, understanding how the natural bias of one person toward another can affect the hiring decision. Provide training. Provide your hiring team with training on diversity and how to eliminate bias from the recruiting process. Make your interview process consistent. This will ensure candidates are compared based on the same questions and no one has an advantage or disadvantage over another. Identify the language used in job descriptions. Remove any words that can be specific to one gender and replace them with titles that are easy to understand. Diversity stats number 11. Only 14% organizations have diversity and inclusion trainings. According to a survey that we conducted, only 14% of organizations have official and comprehensive diversity and inclusion training. Conclusion. Removing hiring bias and developing diversity in the workplace has 3 simple benefits. It's beneficial to your bottom line, 19% more to be exact. It attracts a wide array, 67%, of diverse candidates. It sparks creative talent and promotes better decision-making, 87% of the time, within the company and its leaders, as opposed to leaders that are in need of diversity. Eliminating biases is just one place to start. Diversity Social's diversity training will help make sure your hiring is more diverse, and make new hires feel more at home at their new company.